will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chair be authorized to declare a recess at any time. Without objection, so ordered. Good afternoon. Thank you to all the members joining us today in person and remotely as we consider the Sea Power Projection Forces Subcommittee mark for fiscal year 2022 of the National Defense Authorization Act. Before we get started, I first want to thank all the members for their engagement into this year's subcommittee mark. While the circumstances caused by a late budget submission forced an extremely compressed timeline, I appreciate the willingness of members from both sides of the aisle to work together to get to today's mark. Particularly, I want to thank Ranking Member Rob Whitman for his 15-year commitment to maintaining the bipartisan tradition of this subcommittee. Thank you, Rob. I want to take a moment to highlight a few areas of focus of this remark, beginning with the Navy shipbuilding account. As you all know well, the President's budget arrived with an unexpected cut in the program of record for one of our core battle force platforms, the DDG-51 destroyer, and in addition did not include the near or long-term multi-year plans that we rely on to guide the investments that Congress, the Navy, and industry must make in the future fleet. In spite of these challenges, we once again have developed a mark that makes an independent assessment of our shipbuilding needs. Our mark recommends the restoration of a second DDG-51 destroyer. The Arleigh Burke class of destroyers has proved to be one of our most capable and flexible surface combatants. And while I'm frustrated that this is the second year that Congress has had to restore a major unfunded priority that was unexpectedly removed from the budget, doing so is the right decision for our fleet and for the industrial base. This mark, on a positive note, recommends full support of the Navy's budget request for our Virginia and Columbia-class submarine programs. In contrast to last year's budget, the 2022 request fully funded the steady 2-a-year production rate for our in-demand Virginia submarines and continues incremental funding of the first 2 Columbia-class submarines. Together, this budget and the mark we will recommend to the full committee makes the strongest investment in the stability and growth of our undersea capabilities and industrial base since the 1980s. Of particular note, we adopted new ways to save money and time in the Navy's #1 acquisition program, the Columbia-class submarine. The mark extends the continuous production authorities of the National Sea-Based Deterrence Fund law to 11 additional critical components of the ship that will provide multi-year flexibility that, in its simplest terms, saves money. Recent data from the Navy's Columbia Program Office shows that the National Sea-Based Deterrence Fund authorities to date, and this is before even full production has begun, has saved nearly $1.5 billion from the Columbia program, about $100 million per boat, or actually the exact cost of restoring the DDG boat that I mentioned earlier. Again, our mark will expand those savings even higher. In 2015, our subcommittee created the NSPDF on a bipartisan basis with one goal in mind: to provide a way to resource and support the Columbia program without suffocating the rest of the Navy's other shipbuilding priorities. I'm pleased that the Navy has utilized the acquisition and construction authorities to extract savings. The department, however, has not fully embraced the full potential of the program, which is to take pressure off the shipbuilding account. As the department considers the 2023 budget and beyond, our subcommittee is going to continue to press for full utilization of NSPDF as a way of freeing up more funds for other shipbuilding programs that otherwise will get smothered by the cost of Columbia. With regard to our projection forces programs, this mark recommends continued support for the KC-46 refueling tanker program and the B-21 long-range strike bomber. The mark also supports a robust inventory of C-130H tactical airlift aircraft. To that end, the mark requires a fleet of no less than 287 C-130s. The mark also recommends significant investment in new propellers and engines for the C-130 fleet. I would note that despite clear congressional intent, the Air Force has once again, to our continued exasperation, not included these upgrades in the budget, which protects our pilots and warfighters. Our mark includes language requiring an acquisition of these vital upgrades. Our mark also limits funding for the VC-25B, the replacement for Air Force One, until we get updates on the new schedule for the aircraft. Finally, as part of our jurisdiction of MARAD, this mark continues our panel's continued efforts to augment our critical sealift capabilities. For example, the mark recommends full support for the tanker security program, which we developed on this panel last year to preserve our at-sea fueling capabilities. It also recommends full funding for the 5th and final planned national security multi-mission vessel to support our state maritime academies. Just last week, myself and 3 other members of the subcommittee joined members from Philadelphia on a CODEL to see firsthand the work underway on this program, work that has literally brought that shipyard from the brink with only 13 employees a couple of years ago to now more than 600 workers, and is on its way to 1,200 thanks to the work of this panel authorizing this program starting in 2017. In addition to supporting the training of our future maritime workforce, the successful construction of these vessels using a private sector contracting model, purpose-built for domestic sea lift ships, meets the urgent need to quickly recapitalize the fleet. The Navy already has the authorities to follow a similar path, and the eye-watering example of the Philly shipyard is an inspiring example of why the Navy should endorse this model for other platforms. Finally, this mark rejects a proposal to authorize the purchase of additional used foreign vessels for sea lift. This panel in past years has already provided significant new authority for limited purchase of these vehicles, which only now the Navy is starting to put to use after much delay. Further, despite repeated requests, our subcommittee has yet to receive the results of the analysis of the market for military useful foreign vessels that justifies increased purchases we should be building domestically. They need to do a lot more to restart American-built ships before asking for more foreign-built ships. I want to close by noting that the work of our subcommittee could not happen without the tireless work of our staff. I want to thank Phil McNaughton, Kelly Goggin, Dave Sinicki, and my neighbor from Eastern Connecticut, Sean Falvey, for their work on our behalf. And with that, I now turn to my friend and ranking member Rob Whitman for any comments that he has before we begin today's markup.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you yielding, and I thank you, too, for your leadership and all the great work that this subcommittee does. There's lots of opportunities, but also lots of challenges ahead, so I deeply appreciate all that you do, and you point to the staff between Dave and Phil and Kelly and Sean all do a fantastic job. I'm a little biased, but I think we have the best staff on the Hill, bar none, so thank you all so much. Appreciate all that you do. In opening, Mr. Chairman, I continue to be very perplexed as to our nation's approach to deterring maritime conflict. Last year, after intense deliberation about how quickly to grow our maritime forces, the Trump administration responded with an aggressive plan to deliver the future fleet that was funded and was actionable. For fiscal year 22, the previous administration proposed a construction plan for 12 Battle Force ships. Fast forward to today, the Biden administration delivered an inadequate 30-year shipbuilding plan and indicated that they are further reviewing our maritime capabilities. Only 8 Battle Force ships were proposed in the Biden budget request, and of those Battle Force ships, 2 are ocean-going tugs. An anemic budget request, I believe, that Admiral Gilday indicates will not be able to support a bigger fleet unless we see a rise in the top line. Despite Admiral Gilday's fervent declaration that a 355-ship fleet remains the Navy's North Star, the Biden administration's aspiration to pace China is significantly impaired. While the Biden administration dithers, our competitors are sprinting forward. China already has the world's largest Navy and the world's largest shipbuilding industrial base. And we see through a number of analyses that creates a significant strategic impairment for the United States in order to deter China. China can quickly accelerate during times of instability and conflict, unlike the United States. With over 2,500 total aircraft and approximately 2,000 combat aircraft, China's aviation components together constitute the largest aviation forces in the region and the third largest in the world. Put simply, China's Air Force is rapidly catching up to the Western Air Forces across a broad range of capabilities and competencies. So we see a theme here. Chinese Navy, larger than ours, building capability. The Chinese Air Force, growing, now becoming a major impact on tactical air facility or tactical air capabilities across the world. And while I believe that Chairman Courtney's mark is excellent for the monies allocated to the subcommittee, I think that it's essential to not only keep pace with China, but to have a 2 to 3% real growth over inflationary pacing goals that have been partially exacerbated by excessive federal spending. As for the mark, I wholeheartedly support 8 vessels, which include a second destroyer. I also applaud and support Chairman Courtney's mark that supports the tanker security program and the continued recapitalization of the Ready Reserve Force. Chairman Courtney's mark also continues essential future development funding for the Columbia ballistic missile submarine and the B-21 bomber, both essential components to our nation's nuclear deterrence. But if we're serious about deterring future conflict, I think that we need to significantly boost our maritime capabilities and support the Trump administration's goal of rapidly expanding naval shipbuilding. This would include additional ship construction and weapons procurement that is not currently recommended for inclusion in the chairman's mark. This should also include retention of certain legacy assets that would deter conflict both in the short and midterm. In conclusion, I want to thank Chairman Courtney for his leadership on this subcommittee. He has been focused and undying in the things that he is doing to make sure that our Navy and our nation has what it needs. He continues to set the standard in delivering a mark that supports innumerable advances for the military services. And I'm pleased to associate myself with Chairman Courtney's efforts. I hold the belief that we can do even better during the full committee debate, and I look forward to making this excellent mark even better. And I know that Chairman Courtney is also committed to do the same. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Whitman, and I appreciate the kind words. But I'm the first to note that the mark today is not the 10 Commandments, and the process still has many steps before it.
Yes.
And I look forward to working with you and all the members as we get closer to the full committee markup.
Absolutely.
So now we will proceed to mark up H.R. 4350, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. Copies of our subcommittee mark and directive report language were made available and distributed to member offices on Monday, July 26th. Is there any discussion or questions on the subcommittee mark? Chair recognizes Mr. Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Whitman, I'd like to emphasize through this statement how important the shipbuilding is for our national security. As you know, the EPF is a great ship that's already been used around the world. The EPF is a proven ship with top speeds, large mission decks, and low drafts. We can even deliver units without the need of a traditional port. It's also a large flight deck that can easily be used with a V-22 Osprey operation. The new EPS have significant medical capabilities, including multi-operating rooms, an ICU ward, and other medical services like laboratory and pharmacies. These ships have great medical capabilities to keep our men and women in uniform safe and healthy. Supporting the EPF program in the NDAA is critical to our national security and global interests. This program increases our transportation and medical capabilities at a reasonable cost. This ship is hugely important to our Navy. I hope we can all agree we must include this EPF in the FY22 NDA. And Chairman, I'll give it back to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Carl. Is there any other comments on the subcommittee mark? If there's no further discussion, the chair lays before the members the text of the subcommittee mark for consideration. Without objection, the mark is open to amendment at any point. We will now consider en bloc package number 1. I ask unanimous consent to call up en bloc package number 1, consisting of amendments that have been worked and approved with the minority. Without objection, so ordered. Will the clerk please distribute the en bloc amendment? Is that being done electronically? Okay, I guess we took care of that to the members and to everyone electronically. We're good? Okay. Without objection, the amendments are considered as read. The en bloc package is comprised of the following: Log 01 by Rep. Whitman, Log 02 by Rep. Bergman, Log 03 by Rep. Golden, Log 04 by Rep. Courtney, Log 05 by Rep. Carl. So why don't we go in order of the amendments and ask if the members have any comments regarding their amendments, starting with Mr. Whitman.
Mr. Chairman, I have no comments. This is all about the amphibious ship bundle to make sure that OSD continues the effort to purchase these ships. We know there's been a delay by OSD Cape, but I believe it's incredibly important for this nation to make sure that we exercise the savings, which would be nearly $1 billion in buying 4 ships under this authorization to purchase amphibious ships in this bundle. So Mr. Chairman, with that, I yield back.
Thank you, and again, it continues the work from last year on this program. Next up is Mr. Bergman. Mr. Bergman, you want to make any comments?
Only that this is basically an update of a certification that has to be done by act of Congress. It's more of a paperwork exercise, just to let the the paperwork and the reality match up. I thank everybody for supporting it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Bergman. Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just quickly a few words about the multi-year procurement, but also about the DDG 51 Flight 3 program. The committee spent a lot of time discussing the importance of the new DDG Flight 3 that will soon enter the Navy fleet, bringing with it the addition of its new SPY-6 radar. The Flight 3 delivers the Navy critical new anti-air and ballistic missile defense capabilities. And in the face of a pretty tough shipbuilding budget request from the White House this year and a proposal to reduce the acquisition of DDG 51 Flight 3s, the committee received a lot of testimony from Navy leadership about the importance of getting this ship out into the fleet and out to the combatant commander. So I'm extremely thankful to the committee and to my colleagues, and just extremely encouraged, by the way, that not only this committee, but House Appropriators and the Senate Armed Services Committee have stuck with the two-ship procurement, which was called for by the existing multi-year procurement contract. But speaking about multi-year procurement contracts, for several years now, I've been talking in this committee repeatedly as we've had Navy leadership in front of us about the need to have a follow-on multi-year procurement contract for the DDG 51 program beginning in FY23. And I'm just particularly pleased that this en bloc authorizes a new Flight 3 multi-year contract for up to 15 ships between fiscal years 2023 and 2027. This is going to help to deliver Flight 3s to the fleet over the next 5 years, ensuring that we have a large surface combatant fleet necessary to remain competitive in the near term. But in the long term, it's going to provide very necessary predictability and stability to the two shipyards that build large surface combatants for the nation. It's going to act as a bridge to the DDG-X as well that the Navy needs in the future. This is absolutely going to protect the skilled workforce that the country and the Navy depends on for our large surface combatant programs. The preservation of this skilled shipbuilding workforce and all of our shipbuilding workforce is a matter of national security, and we just can't afford to lose these skilled workers. And we absolutely need to invest in training the skilled shipbuilders of the future as well. So this multi-year procurement is critical for both of those needs, and I have no doubt it's going to play a large role in ensuring our nation's readiness to compete globally at sea in an increasingly challenging maritime environment. I want to thank the chair, the ranking member, and my colleagues on the committee for supporting this important priority and express my extreme appreciation for the hard work of the committee staff in preparing today's mark, the amendments that we're adopting today, and for the many hours of oversight work and attention that they put annually into the National Defense Authorization Act. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Golden. Again, I'll recognize myself on amendment number 4, which is one of the sort of ongoing chronic problems in terms of submarine maintenance and delays in terms of getting particularly Virginia-class submarines back out into deployment has been the bottleneck in terms of submarine spare parts. We, as a subcommittee, requested CBO to look at this issue, and in March of this year, we got a report back that showed, again, that the backlog of parts that are, again, not available is actually growing. It was, according to the report, 146 parts in 2017, and it's up to 485 in 2019. As a result, they're cannibalizing ships to actually fix or try to address this problem, which is obviously not a solution. So now that we have the CBO study in hand that actually identifies the problem, this amendment simply requires the Navy to come back to us with a solution because you know, this is a post-production problem, so it's really on Navy's plate in terms of solving it, and we're going to stay on top of it, and that's what this amendment's all about. Amendment number 5 is Congressman Carl. You're recognized.
Thank you, sir. My amendment very simply corrected some verbiage, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the en bloc package? Congresswoman Luria.
Well, I want to start by thanking the chair and the ranking member for your hard work to get to this point on the markup. I am supportive of these amendments that we're considering here. However, I think that there's some additional amendments that need to be added. I've been very discouraged throughout this process with the divest to invest strategy that's been presented to us by the Navy budget, and I'm hoping that through the full committee markup and as we move forward with the NDAA process that we can actually get back on the right track to continue to grow our Navy in accordance with the rising threats that we have from our near peer competitors in China and Russia. Greatly encouraged by and thank Mr. Golden for his work here on making sure that we could add back an additional DDG. But I continue to believe that we cannot year over year decommission more ships than we build, and I think that we have a serious challenge moving forward, and look forward to working with my other colleagues in full committee to offer an amendment to postpone decommissioning of several of the cruisers, and also strongly urge my colleagues that we join in with our colleagues in the Senate as they have done, as has been noted many times, is needed to add approximately 3 to 5% real growth in this year's budget. And I will be strongly supportive of seeking a similar top line to what has been passed in the Senate once we move on to the full committee markup. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Congresswoman Luria. Is there any further discussion on the en bloc package? If there's no further discussion, the question is on adoption of the en bloc package number 1. So many as are in favor will say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the subcommittee mark? Sorry. The question now occurs on the adoption of the mark. So many as are in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the mark is adopted. Okay. And the chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Golden, for the purpose of a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the subcommittee report the mark as amended favorably to the full committee.
The question is on the motion of the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Golden. So many as are in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. A quorum being present, the ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Okay. Let's see. And what did I do wrong here? And without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Without objection, members have 5 legislative days within which to submit written statements into the record. So ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make necessary conforming technical and clerical changes and to remove from the mark provisions that would cause the mark to refer to other committees or would result in additional direct spending. Without objection, so ordered. And before adjourning, just want to again emphasize we've got more work ahead, obviously, between now and September 1st. And as you know, the subcommittee staff is available even during recess and leading up to September 1 with questions or concerns. And, obviously, we want to keep, the conga line moving here. So, definitely welcome, all that further work ahead of us. Again, with that, no further legislative business before the subcommittee. This meeting is now adjourned.